Hello, I'm Chuck Wolf, Chief Executive for Charles J. Wolf Associates, LLC. As a motivational speaker and a leadership consultant and executive coach and trainer, I often work with very successful people in their companies. Since many can't afford a professional, I volunteer to host a radio talk show called The Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel, on a nonprofit community radio station in Bridgeport, Connecticut, WPKN. My reason for doing the show is to share with as many people as possible this wonderful process for helping people manage their own emotions and their relationships with others. My goal is for everyone listening to learn to use the Emotion Roadmap to make life better. As you listen to me, help others, I hope you are also learning. As a Simsbury resident, I'm delighted to be able to make the show available through Simsbury TV. To learn more, go to my website, www.emotionroadmap.com. Thank you for listening and watching.
And this is Chuck Wolf, and you're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And it's great to be back here with you on this lovely day in Bridgeport, Connecticut. It's a warm day, although we might have some really exciting weather coming to our shores in the Bridgeport area, but also all around New England. I guess there's some weather, so everybody be careful today. Today, the show is going to be about a number of topics that I'd like to talk a bit about, but I always encourage people to call in. And if you're a first-time listener, I'll explain what the show is in just a moment. But if you're a regular listener, thanks so much for tuning back in again. For those of you that don't know, again, I'm Chuck Wolf. The show is about emotions and about managing emotions and about about managing relationships, and it's about using the science of emotional intelligence to help you understand what we're learning in the scientific community that can be practically used in life, at work, at home, in the community, anywhere. And as all of us are aware, emotions sometimes are very powerful and are very complex and often drive some behaviors of ours that we appreciate at times, and at other times we wonder, did we really just say that? Did we really just do that? And we know sometimes emotions make us feel a bit out of control, maybe a lot out of control, possibly. So the show's about helping you understand how to understand what your feelings are driving in terms of your thoughts and your behaviors. And if the feelings that you're having are not helpful to whatever situation you find yourself in, then how do you change them? And the concept of a roadmap is to help you understand how do you get from one feeling that's not particularly helpful to a feeling that's much better for whatever it is you're trying to get done. So the idea of maybe getting from one place to another, for instance, my wife and I just came from Boston where we'd seen the Red Sox play last night. It was a lovely day in the city, and we had some friends that joined us, and we really appreciated the friendship and the time we walked around Newbury Street and Boylston Street before the Red Sox game, and we loved the beautiful setting and the ambiance at Fenway Park. What we didn't appreciate was how the Red Sox played. It wasn't a winning game, but it's so much fun to go to Fenway, and we really enjoyed ourselves. But this morning we had stayed with cousins of mine and had a lovely visit with them, and then got up and drove here. So the idea of moving from one place to another, from Boston to Bridgeport, how do we get here? What's the best way to go? There's several choices of roads that we could drive on. How do we do it? Well, sometimes emotions are like that too. So if, for example, you're feeling anxious and you want to feel confident, let's say you've got a presentation to make, or you're trying to convince somebody, maybe it's a spouse, to go on vacation where you want to go. But you want to be sensitive to her needs or his needs. At the same time, you really hope that they're going to want to go where you would like to go this year on vacation. Or maybe it's somebody at work that you're trying to get them to decide to fund your budget over somebody else's budget, and there's very limited financial resources to go around. And so it's really important for you to have the ability to influence how they feel going forward, so that their feelings drive the thoughts in them that cause them to behave in a way that supports your budget request versus others. So how do you influence people? It's about emotion. When people buy and make decisions to buy a car or a home, it's often rational in some ways, but mostly it's an emotional decision. when we choose finally to buy a home or to buy a car or some major purchase that's important to us. When we decide to commit to marry someone or even to date someone, again, emotions drive so much of what we do. Now, often emotion is in the background, but there are times when emotion is clearly driving how we're behaving. But one of the things we don't often think about is emotions are always present. They're always there. And so this show is all about helping people understand their emotions, to be clear about identifying what they're feeling, to be self-aware. Being self-aware isn't new. Aristotle said how important that was all those many thousands of years ago. But understanding emotions, that's actually been something that we've been trying to do since we had communication, I think, as we evolved as a species. And understanding emotions is really complex. I mean, even though there's now a science that's emerged in the last 25 years or so, there's still a lot of misunderstanding about how emotions originate and what they cause us to do and how they influence our thoughts and our behaviors. But it's all kind of unfolding now. The science of physiological response to emotions is emerging. We're understanding how the brain works and makes connections with emotional responses to certain situations. We also know that not everybody responds the same way to the same things. I mean, look at the division in our country, the partisanship, and people can look at some of the horrible events that happened and over the weekend, and some people have one response, and some people have completely different responses to the same things. So we don't all react the same way. Our emotions are not all the same, and situations don't always cause them to be the same. But we are learning certain things. For instance, we get angry, all of us, at what we believe is an injustice. But we don't all agree on what's an injustice. But we almost all agree on loss, and we get sad when we've lost something important to us. Lost a relationship, lost a job, lost a loved one. Almost everybody gets sad when that happens. So there's some common things we're learning about emotions and how they work. And then over the years in my professional world, I've been a therapist and a psychology professor at different times, and I've learned that we have unique responses to emotions too. So there's the science of emotion, which says this is how emotions work, but then there's the art, which suggests that each of us has some unique responses to different things. And so it's really important, if you're helping people to deal with their emotions, as I try to do in this show the couple of times a month that I'm on the air, it's important to understand who I'm talking to. And if you call, and I'll explain what the call is about in a second, if you call, I want to really understand your situation and who you are. And then I want to use the knowledge that I have over the years of understanding emotional intelligence and this new science that's emerged over the last 25 years about what we've learned that could be helpful to you. And then I talk to you in a way that is very personal and very helpful, typically, to address a situation where you might be stuck today. One of the things I've discovered over the years is that smart people, really good critical thinkers, good problem solvers who get stuck, almost always are stuck around something emotional that's happening either inside them or they're worried about an emotional response with someone that they're dealing with or will be dealing with in the future. And because we don't get taught early on about how to deal with emotions, and we learn through trial and error, which is one way of learning, certainly, that we've all experienced, but it's certainly not the best way to learn. And sometimes we don't learn the right lessons. And so we don't really know a lot of times, how do we deal with depression? Or how do we deal with conflict? Or how do we deal with embarrassment or humiliation even? How do we deal with such tough and challenging emotions? So, again, the emotion roadmap is designed to help you understand what you're feeling. And if what you're feeling isn't helpful, what would be more ideal to feel? And then if we settle on something that's more ideal for you to feel, how do you get there? That's the concept of the roadmap. How do you get from what it is that you're experiencing at this point, the feelings you're having? And if we decide they're not helpful, what feelings would be ideal? And then I talk to you about how do you get there? That's the idea of an emotion roadmap. And then as we explore options about how to help you to change what you are feeling to what you want to feel, not just for you, but for others you might be dealing with, what are they feeling that might not be helpful, and how would you like them to feel ideally? How do you do that? That's the concept of a roadmap, and I help you with all of that. And I do it within 10 to 15, 20 minutes maybe. So I have 55 minutes. I'm on from noontime till 12:55 on the first and second Wednesdays of each month. And I'm here for you. And if you have something that you'd like to call about that is concerning to you, again, smart people, when they're stuck, it's almost always because some uncertainty they're concerned about that is often tied to emotions. They're experiencing some emotions, and that's something that really is problematic for them. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about today, and I'm hoping that I have callers, and the callers, if you want to call me and you've got something you'd like to chat about, the number to call is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. So I'll give you a minute to call. So if you'd like to call, what you might want to call about is something to do at home. If you've got an issue with somebody. Oh, we got somebody calling. Thanks. Hi, this is Chuck Wolf. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Hi, my name is Anne.
Hi, Ann. Thanks for calling. How can I help you today?
So I just happened to hear your show and have been dealing with something I'd love some input on. It's two people involved in it. It's my husband and I. And we seem to have this pattern we can't break. We kind of get stuck in the cycle where he makes a pretty, innocuous mistake. That's usually the root of it is that he's thinking about something related to him and forgets me in the process. And then I let him know that my feelings are hurt and I feel forgotten, and he immediately gets defensive and angry that I've reacted because he hasn't done it on purpose. And it kind of escalates from there because he kind of digs in and provides an excuse or some story about what happened. And then I transition from being hurt about the initial mistake to upset that he can't acknowledge what he's done and that he's hurt me, and he can't truly apologize. Like he'll shout, "I'm sorry, geez," but it's not an apology in the way that I feel an apology, where I feel remorse usually when I'm apologetic for something. I feel caring for that person.
Right.
So then it just kind of escalates from there. So I'd love, I know I play a part in this too, in the escalation, but I'd love any input you can provide.
So let me see if I heard you correctly. What was your first name again?
Anne.
Ann. So, Ann, your situation is that it happens often that you feel sort of forgotten in different instances. You gave an example, but in different instances, you feel like your husband just isn't paying enough attention to you at certain points in time. And if you say something about it, rather than say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I've been working on that, and I'm trying to be better, and I did it again. I realized that, and thanks for calling it out, and I'll keep trying to be better at this, and then you'd be okay. I'm guessing. Does that sound
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And instead of that, he just gets defensive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so you'd like to find. Go ahead. Sorry.
He'll literally shout the words. Like he'll be mad. He gets mad that I've criticized him. Essentially, my sense is he's feeling it as a criticism. He gets mad that I'm criticizing him, and he'll literally shout things like, "I'm sorry, geez, I'm sorry. Okay, enough already." So it's interesting. He feels like he's apologizing. In his mind, that should count, and he doesn't understand why I continue to be upset.
So let me tell you about how the show works, and then see if I can help you a bit. Are you a first-time caller? Or not a first-time caller, but are you have you listened to the show before?
I am. No, I haven't. I literally just happened to be screening through the radio, heard your show, and thought I'd dial in.
Okay, well, great. So maybe it's destiny that that you happen to be listening. Let's see if I can help you out. So the first thing is the show is to kind of focus on how each of you are feeling, and then what might be different if everything went really well after this phone call, how you'd like to feel for you the next time something like this happens, and how you'd like him to feel. So the way you described it, it seems like initially you're concerned that he doesn't pay attention to you. I don't want to say, maybe it's worse than that on different occasions, but at least it just really bothers you, and so you're concerned and somewhat irritated and a bit angry maybe about how about being ignored. That's how you're feeling, if I got that right.
Yeah.
And for him, he's not even conscious of it. So he's feeling like he's in his own world, and he's just, doing whatever he needs to do, and you're along for the ride, or whatever it is you're doing together. And when he hears you be upset about him not paying attention to you, he gets defensive and says, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're saying that to me again, and I'm sorry, all right? I'm sorry. Is that enough?" And he just wants to be done with it.
Exactly.
Okay, so he gets upset himself when you confront him. So what you'd like to have happen instead is that you feel like you can bring something up when it's not working the way you want it to work, and you can feel confident that his reaction to that is "Oh, okay, I see. Yes, okay, I get it why you're feeling that way again, and let me just think a bit about it, and then try to respond compassionately instead of being upset and angry and annoyed that you brought this up again." Does that sound about right?
That does. Yeah.
Okay. So then the question is, how do you get there? How do you make this happen? Now my guess is, because you're calling, this isn't the first time this has happened. Most people don't call on the initial case, unless it's pretty dramatic. But that this is something you've dealt with for a while, and that you must have thought about this a lot. So I never want to suggest the obvious without first asking, so what have you already thought of and tried that didn't work? And do you have any idea about what you might try next, besides what you're hoping I might tell you?
Yeah, I mean, it's gotten to the point, it's causing long-term harm, or deep harm, I should say, to the relationship, in that he's usually unbelievably my rock, and usually very supportive, and then it's just kind of like these landmines out of left field. And so it kind of creates this issue, and so I've tried a couple different approaches. The one that seems to be the most effective is I just bite my tongue and don't say anything, and then wait and try to bring it up at a later time when he's, not feeling sensitive and cornered. And I know a lot of this has to do with kind of how his family communicates as well. I've seen the example of it with the way his parents communicate as well. So I think this has been a lifelong thing that he's had, and this is just how he deals with certain things. But the only solution that I've found that works for us is where I literally just kind of swallow my feelings and don't say anything in that moment, and then try to bring it up at a later time when he's calm. But it seems to kind of, when I do that, it seems to maybe address the trigger of the issue, which is, what was that initial mistake? But it doesn't seem to be addressing what I'm thinking is the bigger issue, which is, does he really know how to apologize? Does he really know how to really self-reflect and know how he's hurt me and like you said, be compassionate to me? And my concern is it's gone on a while, and it is happening fairly frequently, like every couple weeks, every month or so. And what's changed now is we have a young son who's now noticing when we're arguing. And so I'm trying to figure out, do I go to a therapist? Should he go to a therapist? Should we go to a couple therapist? Are there tactics I can employ to help alleviate the situation before seeking additional help? So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
So here's something kind of interesting to respond to that is I'm going to talk for a second about my next week's show, when I actually won't be alive, but there'll be an interview that I did with somebody who's got a book about helping people change, and the fellow's name is Richard Boyatzis, and he talks about when you want someone to change, which is what you're asking your husband to do, that if you're asking someone to change for reasons of compliance, now he relates it to work, but I can relate it here, because you're not asking him to change for him, you're asking him to change for you. And that should be enough, but so far it hasn't been. But if you're asking him to change in a way that somehow is compassionate and engaging for him, that has a better chance of actually creating real change. And so let's see if we can play with that a little bit with what's going on with him. So I listened to what you've tried so far, and so it seems like you've got a couple of things that make sense. One is you just kind of let it go and hope that there isn't a lot of these things, and that bothers you over time, and that's only so good for a little while, and then if it keeps going on, it gets to be a problem for you to not talk about it. And you've tried talking to him later about it after the fact, so it's not in the heat of the moment when you're feeling hurt. And neither one of those have been successful. And you also described that he has a pattern that you've seen in his own family where this seems to be sort of ongoing and how they seem to relate to each other.
Yeah.
Were you going to say something? You started to say something.
I lost the track.
Oh, okay.
But yes, I agree. Yeah.
Okay, and then the last thing that you mentioned was that now you have a little boy, and you'd like to, and he's noticing that you're fighting, and you'd like him, the little boy, to see a better relationship. I mean, not just for you and your husband, but for as a model for him, for relationships he's going to have later. So, I mean, there's a couple things that I'm just going to toss some ideas out to you that potentially might be useful to you. This may or may not work for you, but here's some thoughts. One is you've talked to him about an incident after the fact and bring it up when it's not so hot for you, but it is tied to a specific incident. And a different way of addressing that is to simply address your husband in a time when you seem to be getting along and say, can I bring something up that I know that sometimes is a challenge for us to talk about, and it's not tied to any single incident, but it's just a general feeling I have sometimes that I'd like to just talk with you about, and I'd like to see if we can figure out something together. And see if you can talk to him about that, hey, I sometimes feel hurt. Maybe it's my own insecurity, and this is important. If you take the responsibility that says, look, maybe it's just me and I feel insecure, and if I notice that you don't seem to be caring about me and paying attention to me, my feelings get hurt, and I'm trying to be better and better than that. But I'd appreciate your help with this. And so, now you're it's a little different. Now you're not saying it's your behavior that's bad. It's my behavior I need some help with that I'd like us to respond to. And if that sounds at all appealing, it's only appealing to a certain degree because it's still about you and asking him to do something for you. But right. But I think something that elevates the motivation and reason for him to want to do it is I so want to demonstrate for our son what a good relationship is between a husband and a woman, and a wife, and you know that we've been fighting a bit in front of our son, and boy, I'm worried about that. I want him to have a great relationship, and I want him to feel the love that I feel for you when he has a relationship with someone, and this would really help with that. What can I do? If I'm feeling it's happening at some point, what do you want me to say? I don't want to upset you. I don't want to make you feel like you got to say you're sorry. I just want to be able to say, hey, it's happening now. I'm feeling a little insecure and hurt. I just want to mention it, and then not necessarily say anything else about it. And you don't have to say anything about it. Just think about it, and if it's something you can do to be helpful, and suggest that as a plan, Ann. In other words, you're asking him to engage with you to help solve a problem, not just that's yours alone, but also I think the motivation level gets raised a lot when he thinks about what is he modeling for his son. So how does that sound in terms of something that might be helpful?
I really like that because I think, my distillation of that is I've been trying a compliance approach, and this is what are his motivators, and how can I help him understand that this is ultimately better for him and for his son, and to do it in a way that's outside of an emotionally charged conversation by bringing it up not in a moment where we've had a flare up, but just separate and aside during I'm guessing maybe like while we're out walking or something like that.
Something where you're feeling like this is we're in a comfortable, safe zone at the moment, and I'm taking a bit of a risk here, and you can say that, but it's something I've been wanting to talk to you about, and I'm hoping that we can have a kind of a calm conversation about a problem I'm having. And I think it's a problem that we have as a family, and I'd like your help with it. And I think that changes it, instead of asking him just to change his behavior so that you feel better.
Yeah, that sounds really great. I mean, because it sounds like basically I'm leading with compassion by doing that, as opposed to what he's feeling, which is criticism.
That's right.
So I think that will probably be really effective for us. Thank you.
Well, let me leave you with something else. It's actually kind of something cool that I heard the other day. I'm doing some work for a client. It happens to be Yale University in the next month, or actually the end of this month. And one of the things I'm going to present to them is I'm trying to find emotion management strategies to teach people. And one of the ones that I came across recently, it wasn't my own, but it's I think it'll be helpful to you too. But it's something that I read and I thought, boy, this is so simple and yet it's so elegant. It starts like this. He said, when you have an emotional moment, meaning that there's something happening that is making you feel emotional, and this isn't a good emotional moment, this is a tough emotional moment, then there's three questions you want to ask yourself. The first question is, does this need to be said? That's the first question. And then the second question is, does this need to be said by me? Now, this isn't just with your husband. This can be with any situation like this. And the third question is, does this need to be said by me now? And those questions really resonate, I think, with people about just a strategy. Because sometimes you feel like you want to say something, you want to say it, but if you ask those questions, you realize, number one, I don't need to say this now necessarily, and maybe somebody else will say it. I don't need to say it. And third is. The idea first, does it need to be said at all? Then does it need to be said by me? And then does it need to be said now? But this was related by a comedian named Craig Ferguson, who is a Scottish comedian. I've seen him on late nights years ago, and he's a very funny guy. And he said it took him 3 marriages to learn this. So I don't know if that's helpful. So sometimes maybe if he's trying, and you see it, then don't bring it up too often. But just bring it up on occasion is the point behind those 3 questions.
Yeah, no, I think that's very helpful. No, because he's a good man, and we have generally a very good relationship. It just seems like this silly quirk that I'm determined that we can get through. We can kind of figure out. So this is really helpful.
Well, it's helpful to have you call in, because hopefully everybody who's listening is learning something. It's about when you're stuck and you've got a situation that's challenging, which yours is. If you can stop and just tease out, so what are you feeling, and what do you want to feel, and what do you want the other person in the relationship that where you're struggling a bit to feel, and then you plan for it and you do something that you feel comfortable. See, that's the question I asked you. How does that sound? Because for a plan to work, you have to be able to do it. You have to feel like you're capable of doing this, and you have to feel willing to do it. Because sometimes you're capable, but you're not really willing, and sometimes you're willing, but you're not really capable. But I mean, it sounds like you can answer yes to both of those parts, and so you've got to plan. That's the concept behind the emotion roadmap, and that's why I do the show. So,
well, thank you so much. This just turned my day around. So thank you for taking my call, and thank you for your insights and for doing the show. I appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Ann. I appreciate the call, and best of luck with it.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Take care. Bye.
So everybody, I hope you get the idea of how this works. The concept is, if you got something that you're struggling with that's challenging you, and again, nice relationship with a husband and wife, and just something that's causing some friction, and rather than let it linger, if you're not sure what's the best way to approach it, give me a call. Maybe I can help. The number to call is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. You may want to call about something at home, like Ann just did, or you may want to call about something at work. So while I'm waiting for you to call, I just mentioned that you are tuned to WPKN in Bridgeport, 89.5 FM. Serving Fairfield, New Haven, and Litchfield counties in Connecticut, and Suffolk County in New York's Long Island. And we stream around the world at WPKN.org. And you can listen to us on podcast because once the show is over, I download the show from the station and then I put it up on podcast. You can listen to it on SoundCloud, Stitcher, or iTunes. You can listen to a lot of the past shows. If you're new to the show and you want to listen, you can listen on. I tend to use SoundCloud a lot, and you just type in Emotion Roadmap, or you go to WPKN on the website, WPKN.org, and you click on podcast, and you can look me up that way too. But I'm also on Public Radio Exchange, PRX.org. And you can find some of my shows by typing in Emotion Roadmap there as well. And I'll give you the number again, and I'll wait a moment. 203-336-9756. Have a call. I'm not sure it's for me. No. Well, I might have missed a call. If you were calling again, the number is 203-336-9756, and I'll give you a moment. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Hi, Chuck. Good afternoon. I'm Joni.
Hi, Joni. Thanks for the call. How can I help you today?
I have a friend, a very good friend of 25 years, and we shared company in his house while I waited for my apartment to be ready. And we were always friends, platonically, like brother and sister.
Okay.
And we get along very well. We're compatible. But there's one area where there is no compatibility. And I went to his pastor many times, and my own pastor, and I went to a social worker that I have dealt with after my mother's death. And I said, there's a problem where this man is obviously attracted to me, and was when he first met me, but he's not allowing himself to fulfill any desires. And he explained it to me as best as he could that he has scrupulosity. I went to the library and I had the reference librarian get some information on it, but it was vague. And I wondered if you were familiar with this. It has something to do with his religion, which is a conservative Catholic, and an experience he had with a priest when he was young, like in his 20s. He's now in his 60s.
I don't know the name of I'm not familiar with the term, so I can't help you with that. And it sounds like you've explored the mental health field in terms of trying to get some help, either from a social worker and also from clergy to get some help, and all that's kind of hit some dead ends. What are you hoping happens going forward here?
What I hope happens is that our friendship can evolve. He wants it to evolve, and I do. Otherwise, it's going to remain just kind of lateral.
And that's not where you want to be. You want to move past platonic to some kind of.
I'm not looking for marriage.
Yeah.
Now, unfortunately, in this country, you're penalized if you get married later in life. My rent would go up if I had someone else in here, and also your Social Security is taxed. And I'm calling from New York. I don't know, it might be different in Connecticut.
Yeah, no, okay.
But everywhere.
Yeah, okay. So Joni, you've got some complications that impact what could be in terms of a relationship. Is not being married like part of the religious element that is?
No. If he wants to get married, so that would take away any. For a better word, lack of a better word, he would be sitting if he were to share intimacy with me if we were not married.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was wondering. Yeah, but that is something that concerns him.
It concerns him, but my concern is that marriage is a very, very big commitment.
Sure.
And you have major shifts in all areas of your life.
Yeah.
I just moved into my apartment, which I waited 4 years for. It's my domain. It's my space. If he were to move in with me, I would lose that. But you can't. I don't think he understands that people can have intimate relationships and loving relationships, yet live apart. He's a free spirit, as I am. He enjoys his being able to be on his own, but I can't get him to understand that he doesn't believe you can have an intimate relationship if you are not married.
Okay, so you've been dealing with this for a long time?
About a year.
Well, you've been with him you've been friends with him for quite some time, but within the last year, you've had a change in terms of what you want out of the relationship. And
no, when I moved from his home, he realized he had developed love feelings for me.
I get it. Okay.
And expressed it, and I too. It came as a surprise. It was almost like being 14.
Interesting.
And I know that I am probably the more emotionally mature person than he is, because he's never had a relationship with a woman. He lost his mother when he was 8 years old. That may have something to do with it. He's had maybe 2 or 3 girlfriends, but never got anywhere or at any length or depth that our relationship has, and he knows that. And he knows if he parts with me, he'll probably never have another relationship with a woman. And I want to help him. All of his friends say, please. We know right now that life is short for us in biological terms,
Sure.
because we're in our 60s.
Right.
But we have another problem that's incomprehensible, is that we might not have a planet in 30 years either. And time is very valuable. At least it is to me.
Sure.
My whole way of thinking has changed every time I hear the news and I hear that word global warming, climate change.
Sure.
I readjust my thinking to make sure I am doing what I want for me and the people I care about in this world while we're here. I'm not being a fatalist, but let's face it. It looks a little grim right now. And I want to share time with someone I've had a lot of time with, but more close. I mean, everyone says they don't want to be alone when they die. I grew up a youngster in the Cuban Missile Crisis. I remember the bomb drills.
Right.
And holding my friends in the basement where the canned goods were stored in the event that big flash happened. Yesterday was Hiroshima.
Right.
This sounds very deep, but I want to continue a relationship with this man, and I can, but I can't have the fulfillment that a human being needs. And I know that I can help him. He's afraid. He has fear that it will be hell and damnation, and he does believe in hell. Catholics, some of them really believe in the heaven and hell and the devils and the caves and the ragged clothing, as Elaine said on Seinfeld. He does.
So, well, it seems like, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like you have some somewhat clear choices. You're not willing to marry because of the complications around financial problems that get created because of the way our government works. Did I understand that right?
Yes.
Okay. And yet he's not willing to have we don't know if you were married, if there would still be problems, but he's not.
That would solve it. But that's a one giant leap for this womankind.
I know. I understand what you're saying. And so, but he may not be able to change. I mean, if he really believes, as you suggest, in these, concepts of hell and heaven and so forth, and he thinks he's going to hell, you realize what you're asking him to do is almost beyond the pale for him.
Oh, I know that. But he's trying to change. He had a series of things that he had to accomplish this summer, and he has. He has a clean bill of health, and he just finished doing a lot of fireworks shows for that big company in Bellport. starts with a G. And he's at the time of his life where I've never seen him so happy. And he told me just the other day, I have one more hurdle to work on. And I said, well, what's that?
You, yeah.
Catholicism.
Yeah.
And I said, thumbs up. Okay, there's a start.
Yeah, well.
I'm very patient. I've had a lot of ups and downs, and it's strengthened me. And I was only married once. I was 18. And I was a child. I was a mother at 19. I lived in the Haight-Ashbury area of San Francisco, 3,000 miles away from home.
Right.
And I was afraid to come home because I had scorned my father.
Yep.
I didn't go to school. I became a mother, and I was in good shape. But he made me give me a lesson, which I learned well, and I had a beautiful, unusual, unorthodox life. I don't know how it happened, but I've had a wonderful life, and I would like to wind up the rest of my life with someone I really care. I genuinely care about him, and I could really help him. He needs a woman in his life. He does, because he didn't have a mother. He was raised by cousins and aunts and uncles. They didn't have psychologists for children back in the early 50s when they lost a parent. They kind of just give him a comic book and,
So let me just understand. So you could change all of this if you were willing to give up the financial stability that you've spent a lifetime earning. But if you got married to him and you lost some financial advantage, but everything else that you're looking for would be there. Do you think that's true?
No. Having been married once and it failed, and that was because of youth, immaturity.
Okay.
Just experience from friends who go through hard times, struggling in relationships, and they're very unhappy. And my father was married 3 times, so maybe that leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
I'm sure it does.
And he was, when he began his practice, he was purely matrimonial. And so I would hear stories when he would talk to my mother after he got home from work. And then it happened to my parents. And I was very young.
Yeah.
And he was the mayor of Patchogue at the time, a 2-term mayor.
Mm-hmm.
And when a client came in for a divorce, he ended up marrying her.
Interesting, yeah.
So to me, it's a very sticky situation,
Sure.
Almost like being trapped, because I've seen the downside more than the good side of matrimony.
All right. Well, let me see if I'm trying to get at the heart of this, and it seems like marriage is not an option for you. It's not just about the financial stuff, which is what you said earlier, but there's more than that.
No, I would like. I'm not saying I'm against the institution of marriage, but I just feel it's too much for the whistle. Is that the saying? Paying too much for the whistle?
I'm not sure what the saying is, but at this point, you're unwilling to get married. That's clear.
If it's just for intimacy, yes.
Okay.
You know?
So one choice is, you said you're a patient person, and he's got a plan to work on the Catholicism and trying to get over this fear he has of being damned in some way for experiencing intimacy outside of a marriage and feeling like he's doing some kind of sin, and you're willing to wait. And I'm wondering how long.
Probably till I resolve in my heart and my brain that I would have to move on, but still maintain a friendship.
So
I
you
think he
recognize that's one of your real choices here. That if he's incapable,
Right.
I mean,
Right.
he sounds like he's trying and he loves you and he wants this to work. But I've been, and you've been with him, and I've been with people who feel this way, and when they believe so strongly and deeply, it's really hard to let go of that. And he might be able to let go of it for a bit. And then some night he wakes up and he says, I can't keep doing this. I'm so, it's pushing him, towards a brink of some kind. So, I mean, I'd like to think that you could make this work, but you're also, I think, a realist, and you've been with this fellow for a while, and you say you're a patient person, but I'm thinking that maybe the best help I can give you is suggest a timeline in your head that says, I'm willing to wait, but not forever, and it has to be a loose timeline, because you don't want to say, okay, on May 30th next year, that's it. But you want to say, maybe in the spring of next year, if something isn't changing, if I don't see enough change, I got to find some way to, separate my friendship from what I'm looking for in terms of more. And if I want
Right.
that, maybe to try and find that someplace else. And I'm just suggesting maybe that's something you can control, because I can't give you an emotion roadmap to help somebody let go of a conviction about whether they believe in hell or heaven. I mean, if that's been ingrained and that's so powerful and so consuming that even if he's trying and he spends some time with you and tries to get past it, and you do have some intimate moments, that, it wouldn't be shocking if it popped back up again.
Well, I thank you, but I still have to find out what that word I cannot scrupulosity.
Yeah, I don't think maybe
It's not serendipity.
Yeah, I don't know that'll be helpful. I think the one thing that you want to think about, Joni, is how long do I give it? Because it sounds like you do. I mean, unless there's something else you think you can do to help them, is that a possibility for you to do something more to help them than what you're already doing?
What he can do to help himself is to set up some kind of a meeting, a canon lawyer, CANON, canon, and there's some. You have a meeting with a group of people. I guess I don't know what it's. I have no idea what it's like. I guess you go and meet with a bunch of Catholic people.
Some kind of religious experience that helps people to move past these concepts and ways where they feel like the good that they do outweighs this one area in their life that may not be perfect.
But this is something I would have to go through as a non-Catholic. Even though I attend his church, I go to the 5:00 Mass with him to try to understand Catholicism. And I go to the Methodist church across the street on Sunday morning. And, I mean, they're all the same, basically. It's all the same. It's all one God. But I'm trying to help myself understand him. But his thinking is much more conservative than his priest. His priest is a liberal priest. He's a holistic priest. He believes in the whole universe, God,
Yeah,
God
I
is in
understand.
us. God is not in heaven. God, that kind of, and my friend Michael buys it.
Yeah.
But when he goes home, he can't really let it permeate into his psyche and accept it, because something is fighting him all the time, and he's in constant turmoil. He's always tired. He doesn't feel good. He's making his body ill.
No, I understand. Well, that's what I'm saying. The way you've described him makes him sound like a devout person who, if he pushed past this, would have a hard time staying past this. Is my point, and then feeling awful that he had done this. And you're not at the place where you feel like, again, that if you married, a lot of this might go away. I don't know if it would go away, by the way, and that's a big risk, but it might, and you're not willing to make that step. So until the two of you find some common ground, where and maybe it's in him if he's willing, because he says at least he's trying to get past this, and then I mean, if the canon experience you talk about is a possible way for him to meet with other Catholics who have kind of had some similar kinds of feelings, who have moved on and found life better because they've been able to move on. And he somehow feels through peer coaching, instead of going to a liberal priest who doesn't make sense because it's not like the person he grew up with, then it's maybe a chance for you to explore that, and maybe you go down that road with him, and maybe that gets you the result that you need. I think you have to go into it with the idea that maybe it doesn't also, and that, again, that you accept the fact that, look, I love this guy. If he can't be the person I need him to be, though, I got to find somebody else for the relationship that I want in the way that I need it. And, you just, you do everything you can to make it work. And if it works, that's great. And if it doesn't, then you're okay with that.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. It won't be the end of the world. I'm too old and have too much experience.
I mean, you're very thoughtful about it, Joni. You've really thought it through, and you really understand, what's at play here. I'm trying to help you with the reality check in some ways that I don't know if it's possible for him, the way you've described him, to actually move past it and for it to really be meaningful. But maybe this canon experience, if that's something he's looked into and he thinks that might be a way to go, then I'd go full bore into it with him and see if that gets you where you want to go to. And if it doesn't, then at some point, because time is short for us. I'm your age. I'm older than you. We don't. Who knows how many more years we've got for a variety of reasons. And you want to be with someone, and so maybe this is the guy, and you do everything you can to make it be this guy. But if it can't work in a way that's going to be okay with you, then at some point you say, you know what, I want to be friends. It's not working. I don't want to push you anymore. I know you tried. I really appreciate it. Let's see if we can still be friends somehow. And I gotta move on.
Well, I thank you. This is a long one. This is a long chat. And
I hope it's helpful.
I'm off to the store to buy fresh swordfish from out in West Hampton Beach, where it comes in really fresh.
Sounds great.
And he is also a New York State licensed clammer, and after work he's going clamming, and we're going to have some cherry stones on the half shell. So,
yeah, if you feel up to it, have the conversation you had with me with him today.
I will, because I've already bought a nice bottle of good rosé, which he likes. He's not a drinker at all, but he'll have a glass of wine to relax him. That's it.
Well, let me leave you with one other thing. You talked about global warming, climate change, whether we're going to have a planet in 30 years or whatever it is. The one thing I try to help people with who have found out that they have like some terminal disease, and in some ways the planet might have a terminal disease. I don't want to say it is or isn't, but there's a lot of information that's out there that says things aren't really good for sure. But one thing that happens to people when they know that there's a time, we all know at some point we pass on, but we don't know when, and so we don't really think a whole lot about it. But when you have a terminal disease and somebody tells you got 6 months or a year or 2 years or whatever it might be, every day becomes incredibly important. And so while you might have this view of the planet not being around for a while and you not being around for a while, if you've got that focus on making every day special, I think that's good news. I think all of us should do more with trying to recognize how important it is to live every day as best we can, as meaningfully as we can, with purpose and with enjoyment and with some joy and compassion for those that we care about the most. So I think if you're feeling that way, that's a good thing in some ways.
I do. It's not new to me. I lost a brother to Hodgkin's disease in 1976, and I saw him suffer. He was too young, and in those days, Sloan Kettering, they were new at treatments, and they just burned his lungs with the radiation and the chemotherapy, and he had a heart attack because he was breathing so much because he just couldn't breathe. And what he did was organize the 11th floor of Sloan Kettering. At that time, Alice's restaurant had come out. And he was tired of people coming in and asking him how he felt. He said, I'll tell you how I feel. And he told them what he felt. And it was derogatory. he was being honest. So he had everybody on the 11th floor get up. They had a date for a walkout, and they would take their mobile IVs in their wheelchairs, and he said we're going to open the windows, which they didn't, and pretend to jump, and he wrote poetry. He started reading Ulysses. That became his favorite and final book. He lived his life to the fullest. And when he found out he had a choice whether to have a heart operation or to live out the next 2 weeks, he said, let me think about it. He opted for the operation. And just before they wheeled him into the OR, he had a heart attack.
Oh.
So I think that was the way to go.
Okay.
He would have more dignity. But I watched my brother, who was 7 years older, go through life like he was thumbing through the pages of a phone book looking for a number in a hurry, but with clarity.
Well, I'm going to have to go because my show's over. But
I know. I just realized I'm not looking at a clock.
And
thank you so much.
Oh,
Next time I call you, I hope I have something positive about this.
Thanks, Joni, and thanks for the call. You take care.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. And you're listening to WPKN 89.5 FM. This has been Chuck Wolf, the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And next week, be sure to tune in for my interview with Richard Boyatzis on helping people change. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.